So, hello everybody. Welcome to today's session. And today's session is going to be about report writing and presentation. So, our mentor is going to be this great lady who is very experienced within this space. Her name is Goodness. I'm going to let her introduce herself further, and then we're going to proceed with today's session. So, Goodness, welcome and happy to have you on board.
Thank you so much, Karim. I hope I pronounced that right. Yeah,
Perfect.
good day, everyone. It's an honor to be here. So my name is Goodness Orji, and I work in a SOC. I basically do alert triage, monitoring, alerting, incident response as well, and detection engineering, as well as reporting. So reporting is core, just like I mentioned in the course. For everything we do in cybersecurity, documentation is key, right? So you come across an incident, you've been able to drill down from root cause to how it's going to be resolved, to lessons learned and all of that. It needs to be documented, right? So reporting is a core part of everything you do in cybersecurity. Reporting is how you communicate your findings, how you um, basically communicate with stakeholders. This is what is going on. This is what you can do better and all of that. So it's a pleasure to be here. And I believe we've gone through the session and I'm open to answering any questions that you may have. Right. So I'll share my screen shortly. Okay, please confirm you can see my screen, maybe raise of hand or something.
Yes, you're totally visible.
Okay, so I think I'll just walk us through it all over again and then I'll take our questions. So cybersecurity reporting, just like we covered in the class, understanding why it is important and how exactly to go about it, your writing processes, best practices, and I also talked about metrics and tools that you can use to carry them out, right? So a cybersecurity report is a document that provides insights into security incidents, vulnerabilities, risk, and all of that. So it depends on what exactly you want to report. It depends on what exactly you are working on, right? That will determine what kind of report you need to put out, right? And when you know what you want to communicate, the next thing is who are you communicating that to? Who is your audience, right? So core things when it comes to cybersecurity, what do you want to communicate? Who are you communicating to? And what will be the most effective way to communicate that, right? So cybersecurity reports is basically just the document that is giving insight into security incidents, vulnerabilities. It could be risk, compliance status within an organization. So you're communicating if it's a case of an actual incident or maybe you carried out maybe a simulation or something. So you're basically communicating the key findings, the analysis you carried out, and at the core of it, what are your recommendations to help stakeholders, make informed decisions, right? So stakeholders may not be available throughout everything going on. They cannot be everywhere at the same time. Report is something that they can basically read through a report and it gives them an overview of something that has happened in a whole week in an environment. It could be a monthly report, it could be a quarterly report. And just by reading that document, they get insight into everything that has happened within a particular time, right? So presentation is also a part of report, of course, but in presentation, it is more visual. Most times it is even verbal, right? Where you're actually like presenting, not just sending out a report for someone to read. You're actually, most times you've written a report and you're now presenting it, trying to carry them along, trying to break down what you have in your report to give them a better understanding. So it's more visual, the communication is much more clearer than just the report. You're now like giving more insight into what you have on your report. So we have basic report elements, and these are is not limited to this, right? So depending on the kind of report you are working on, you have your title page, you have the executive summary, the experimental details, but this is largely dependent on the kind of reports that you are submitting. There are certain reports that may not involve experiments or may not even contain your analysis, right? But if you're actually working on a report where maybe you had to carry out an analysis and all of that, you want to give in detail, okay, these are the details of, these are the tools that we use, this is the results we got from testing out this. Okay, we found out that this will not work if we go this route, but when we did it the other way, just results, discussions, and then you come to a recommendation. So, from my findings on this incident, this is what we should do better. These are policies we should implement, right? These are security tools that we should have in place to be able to um, avoid such incidents the next time. Then, of course, your conclusion, more like a brief summary of this is what everything we've been talking about in conclusion. This is it, right? So, it's not limited to this, but depending on the type of report you're working on, a cybersecurity report would most likely include each of this, right? Table of contents, the body, all of that. So it all depends on the kind of reports you are writing. I also already explained the presentation. So like I mentioned, presentation is more
Excuse me,
visual.
madam. Hello. May you go back to previous slide, please? Oh, yeah. Okay, okay. Okay, thank you, thank you. Technical report, thank you. Thank you,
All
madam.
right. So for presentation, like I mentioned, it is more interactive, if that's the right word. You're practically demonstrating maybe what you already have in your report, right? So presentation is more visual, right? It could be in form of, let's say there's a board meeting and I'm putting together my findings maybe in form of a slide and all of that. So it's not just something you come up, it requires preparation. You need to organize your words, organize your visuals, you know. Sometimes even try to think of, oh, for this presentation I'm about to make, what kind of questions are people going to have, right? I've done maybe, let's say you're researching on a particular malware. So let's say you're researching on a particular malware or just maybe one threat that is, and then you're asked to, okay, try to make findings on how this is likely going to affect people within your industry, right? And now you want to make a presentation that this is what I found out, and this is what I think we should do. This has been hitting, maybe it's a ransomware attack, and this has been hitting so many other industries, within our niche and all of that. This is what we can do better. So you need to already picture certain questions that these people are going to have regarding um that presentation and be able to, um prepare ahead to answer them. So presentations are widely used when it comes to tertiary work settings, right, to give a more detailed report. So for instance, maybe a financial organization, right, and maybe we're trying to get the total amount of money that was spent, um, total amount of money that was probably spent on, for instance, maybe purchasing a tool, or let's say a tool, a security tool needs to be purchased, and you have your breakdown. Remember that most times stakeholders may not even be so cybersecurity inclined. So you're trying to make a presentation to help them understand why that tool is needed in the first place, how it's going to help improve the security posture, and you're making a detail of why it is actually worth investing that amount of money. Right. We also use presentations in schools. I believe a number of us have had to defend projects at one time in our lives, right? So sometimes you could go beyond the visual elements, the graphs and pie charts, and even include maybe short videos. I've seen presentations where maybe you have a video that speaks to that thing you're talking about. You could just play a short video, try to get what your audience, what is their view regarding that video, and then it helps you now build on the message you want to pass across. So why are reports and presentations important? It helps with clear communication. It helps with building credibility, persuasion and influence, career advancement, engagement and impact. And it helps with building your brand. But remember that all of this is dependent on the kind of report or presentation you are making. So when it comes to presenting cybersecurity data, I mentioned from the start that you need to know your audience. You need to know your audience. Sometimes you're communicating to a technical audience. You can be communicating to a non-technical audience, right? For instance, let's say I want to create a high level report or presentation to okay, so let's say we have a team. So this team is made up of, we have people in HR, we have people in IT, we have those in maybe risk management and all of that. Now, everybody is good at their own different fields, right? But when you want to make certain presentations, let me use a cyber drill exercise, right? So I was opportuned to lead more like a tabletop exercise, right? For an organization. And one of the things that had to be considered while preparing the presentation for that tabletop exercise was to understand the audience. It was a mix of audience, right? They all work for the same organization, but while some are technical, some are non-technical. And the aim of the tabletop is to make sure that everybody understands the different roles they play in a case of an incident. So, for instance, we picked a scenario we want to talk about. So, let's say this particular thing happens in your organization. How is communication going to go from the basic end user down to maybe the HR, and just anybody in different roles? So I had to tailor that presentation to suit the different audience. So in that way, my presentation is in such a way that it's not too technical and is not just there. Right. And for cases where I could not avoid using, there are terms that there's no other way to say it. Maybe it's a technical term. I had to make sure that in my presentation, I explained what that particular term means. So that way you're able to carry everybody along. So when you're doing your presentation, it's important for you to tailor your content to your audience. The data I'm going to use when I want to present to a high level, maybe stakeholder. Stakeholders are looking for results. Oh, we invested this amount of money in maybe security operations. What is it helping us achieve? What has it done for us? How many attacks did they actually help us prevent? It's different from maybe when I'm trying to do for instance, a weekly report to communicate maybe total number of tickets that were raised within a week, number of events, core events that happened within a customer's environment in a week, right? You see that each of them have different purpose. So I need to understand the audience to know how to tailor that presentation or report to suit them. Another very important point is defining your key message. It needs to be clear. You don't need to start taking them through all the things you went through. Or when we were investigating, let's say there was so let's even say there's a ransomware attack, for instance, and then you had to call the person in one other department. From there, the other person called another person. From there, you started trying to isolate systems. You started trying to. So your report is not to be very verbal. So you need to define your key messages. What are your key findings? You don't need to take them through those information that are not relevant. What is relevant to them is how have we been able to contain this ransomware attack? What can we do better? What were the loopholes that the attacker exploited? So your presentation or report, it needs to be clear. Summarize your key findings. Don't go beating around the bush. Right. So also, depending on the kind of presentation you're doing, please use structured slides, right? With good visuals, your bullet points, minimal text. Don't make it too crowded. When you're trying to do a presentation, it's like you're putting everything you want to say. The explanation and everything you want to say is on your slide. So your slides should be basic key points, key things that you want to talk about, and not like you're carrying a note. People look at it and they already get tired even before the presentation, right? So use real world cases and incidents to maintain interest. So depending on the kind of presentation you're doing, try to make it very relative, something they can actually relate with. Oh, I've had this experience, and even if not directly, oh, this has happened with this organization, trying to do down on that. So try to use real examples. Okay. Then another important thing is your pacing and clarity. I don't even know if I'm running very fast, but please, when you're doing your presentation, take it slowly. Try to understand the audience and be sure that at each point, um, what the communication you are making, it's clear, right? You don't want to be running too fast or, too slow and all of that. So just maintain a steady pace, right? So when it also comes to presenting cybersecurity data effectively, there are core things that I mentioned, like your charts, images, and all of that, right? So, but when it comes to cybersecurity data, because most times we're probably dealing with numbers, so we use more of tables, graphs, charts, to show trends. Um, this is the number of phishing attacks we've had over maybe malware that was downloaded over the internet. So maybe we're trying to gauge in this quarter that just ended, what is the ratio of the number of phishing attacks we had to the ratio of maybe malware attacks that we had and all of that. So you use it to kind of show trends. Okay, this is sometime in January, it was here, it came down, it went up again, and all of that, using your graphs and charts, right? Diagrams explaining maybe your attack vectors. This is how the network flow is, and all of that. So it makes it more relatable. So, for example, let's say a pie chart that is showing the phishing and malware. It could be a line graph or even a bar chart, right, that is showing MTTT trends over 6 months. So I talked about MTTD is one of the metrics. This means mean time to detect. So let's say we're working on improving our detection time. Ideally, when an event happens, let's say within a customer environment, I am supposed to pick up this as fast as possible. So that even if it's something that, an attacker is let's say an attacker has an end goal of maybe even taking full control over your system, but it starts somewhere. It could start from the person even getting access to your network. Maybe the person creates a user account. From creating a user account, maybe the person is now trying to get an admin access and all of that. So at each point, how fast are we even able to detect an incident before it escalates to something else? So let's say we're trying to get like a trend of the mean time to detect over 6 months. Okay, in January we were able to detect incidents within let's say 6 hours within the time it happened. And then within the next month, let's say it took us 4 hours. Let's say it also took us three. So let's say we're doing like a trend of 6 months, right? So at each point, we could see that, okay, we did better in January than we did in March? What caused the gap in March, and how can we do better? Right? So you're able to see like a trend over 6 months. So that is one of the things that presenting your data using this can help you achieve. So like I mentioned, these are examples of the bar chart. This is a pie chart, your line graph. This is a pie chart showing phishing versus malware incidents within a given period, right? So let's use an organization. You can see that from this chart, you had over 44% were able, they clicked maybe on a phishing URL, and that is how maybe their devices got compromised. But just looking at this chart, it can give you like an overview of, oh, okay, that means we had more people that fell for maybe clicking on a phishing URL. Some people even went as far as downloading an attachment. They didn't just click, they downloaded an attachment within the mail. You can see 25% of them, then about 14% clicked maybe on an imposter message. About 3% downloaded, they clicked on a URL that probably instantly downloaded a malware to their devices and all of that. So this is a pie chart basically giving you an overview of um, what happens. So presenting, helping you present your data much more effectively than when you're just trying to tell them with your mouth. Oh, we had more phishing URL. This one, they can picture it in their head. Oh, we had more people fall for this, than this, and all of that. Yeah. So one particular report that I'm picking out, like I mentioned, there are different types of reports depending on what you're trying to communicate, right? So cybersecurity incident reports is one type of report. So most times this is giving executives, managers, stakeholders insight into what happens or what happened. So it's probably still ongoing or in the past within an organization, right? So a typical incident report outlines what occurred. It gives you an analysis of the event and what steps you can take to prevent future events. Remember when I talked about the different contents of a report? It has to have your title. For incident report, most times it will go with timelines. So you're straight up saying on the 7th of this day, by this time, we noticed maybe access to this and that. So depending on kind of report, you need to be detailed. Then you start, okay, this is the analysis. When we looked at the logs, maybe we downloaded the Windows logs, we downloaded firewall logs, we were looking through to see the point of entry and how the person moved maybe laterally from one system to another and all that, right? So you want to provide a detailed analysis of the event. And then you've now found out, oh, this is how this person got in. How can we prevent future events, right? So at the very minimum, your incident report should be able to answer to who, what, where, when, and why. These are core questions when it comes to incident response. It should be able to answer the who question, what, where, when, and why. Or maybe what was this person's objective? Did we even stop the person before the final hits, or this person has already done a hit and all of that, right? So it depends on who exactly you're reporting to, maybe the CISO of the organization. Most times, incident reports are going to the CISO or to the SOC team, right? And that now determines how detailed the report should be. A report I am giving a CISO and the report maybe for the team is not going to be the same because their core objectives are different, right? So incident report is also a report that captures incident details such as the nature of incident, the impact on the business, remediation actions that have been taken, and recommendations for future. So the writing process, just like I mentioned before, you need to understand your audience and the purpose. Why am I writing this report? What do I want to achieve with this report? And who am I writing it for? So that will now help you to know what kind of data you need to collect. it will help you to gather and structure your information in a way that helps you communicate clearly, so that you're not just writing jargons, maybe to a non-technical reader. That person will just be reading and is like, "Ah, this is not for me. Are you sure this report is for me?" Right? So when you understand your audience, the purpose, and it helps you know the structure, what kind of logs you're going to need, what kind of flow you need to put in place. That will now help you to communicate more clearly, right? Um, I've talked about visualization using your charts, data, and most importantly, please always review. Look out for accuracy and consistency. Remove any unclear session, and as much as possible, please get a second eye to help proofread your reports and presentations, right? Um, so this is an example of a SOC incident report breakdown, where we have like the incidents overview, the root cause analysis, findings and impact. So this is not a full report, but like these are core things. Just like I mentioned, sometimes the timeline is very important. This attack was detected at this time. We found that this was happening at this time. We had to isolate the systems, just for us to even get to that containment stage. Maybe it was already 4:30 a.m. and then we started a root cause analysis. Maybe the attacker exploited a weak password on an exposed RDP port, and person was able to get access. So probably the admin or something was using a very weak password. Maybe the person's password was even password, right? And the attacker was able to get into the network, right? Your reports will detail your findings and impacts. Oh, this system was affected. When this happened, it cost, let's say, I keep using a ransomware attack because it is most prevalent, right? So, if a system has been encrypted and all, you basically don't have access to it. Like you just have your ransomware notes in front of it, right? So at that time, you're unable to, you're unable to use that system. At the same time, um, activities could even go on pause because people are not able to work with their systems. Critical infrastructures, maybe your core, let's say it's a bank, maybe your core banking applications will just be on still. People are now beginning to complain, oh, we can't make transfers, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that, right? So that is the impact of that affected system. Then what are your recommendations? How can this be avoided in future? So, okay, you people should try to enforce MFA, because if at all the password was weak and then let's say there was MFA in place, even if the attacker was able to get access to the password, the attacker would need an additional layer of protection to be able to get access to that account. So if it was just the let's say he had the password and then he had to get like an authentication code before, that could have at least been an obstacle. But in this case, first the password was already weak and the person got access. So you maybe in this case you're now recommending, please, you need to strengthen your password policy. Maybe set a policy in place that if users have not if users have not enforced their MFA, like there's no way they can log in. It's not by choice. Like there's no way you can even log in if you don't have MFA set up. So that helps them to improve and avoid this exact kind of incident the next time. Then we have common mistakes you should avoid when you're writing your report and presentation. Overloading people with information. Please always pick relevant things. Don't start telling them how, oh, I was trying to investigate this, and for that reason I've not slept for 3 days. We went from this place to this place, we now went to pick up the um just give them information that is related to the core things that they want, which is what happened, how did the person get in, at what time, what containment actions were made. Like give them information that is important and not unnecessary information. Another common mistake is poor data visualization. Make sure whatever visuals you're using is clear. Your graphs, your images, however way you're presenting it, let there be a structure to it. So the common mistakes to avoid are just the opposite of the major ingredients that you should have in your report and presentation. So when you do the opposite of that, that's going to land you in a big trouble, kind of. So it's just the opposite. You ignore what exactly your audience needs, and you're just giving content. So you need to adapt your content to meet your audience needs, which is why one of the core things I mentioned is that when you're doing your cybersecurity report and presentation, you need to understand your audience and the purpose of that report or presentation, right? Another mistake is skipping proofreading. Please, sometimes something can be 100% and then somebody looks at it and helps and points out maybe a particular. So always get a second eye where need be. So we also have cybersecurity metrics. So these are core things that also come in place when it comes to reporting and presentation, especially in the cybersecurity space. Um, cybersecurity space, you have your key performance indicators, right? That helps with tracking what you are doing, right? Your incident response efficiency, depending on the kind of report you're doing. Sometimes you're having a KPI, maybe you want to track vulnerabilities within a quarter, you want to track compliance, just depending on what, maybe you're trying to even track the health of your cybersecurity systems and tools, right? So metrics are beyond numerical data. They are used to evaluate effectiveness of a company's cyber defenses. And they are important because they help with making informed cybersecurity decisions. We had a discussion around trends where we said, let's say an organization is trying to see how they have improved with their mean time to detect over time. So they did a trend of maybe from January down to June. And with that trend, they're able to now know that, okay, when we did this in January, our detection time was lower. We're able to detect events faster. That means we should keep up with what we did here. When we applied this other measure, oh, our detection time increased. It took us maybe over 48 hours to detect an incident. So it helps to make more informed cybersecurity decisions. It helps with easier communication with stakeholders as well. You're able to present a clear picture of the state of things, right? Which can also help them in making decisions when they're taking certain cybersecurity initiatives. So maybe they now want to start saying, oh, okay, maybe we need more hands, we need more analysts to be able to detect this. Or maybe we need to be more innovative, maybe introduce use of AI, to help with faster detection. Or how can we bring automation in place so that our detection time will improve? So it helps communicate things clearly with them. Maybe you've been telling them, oh, we need more staff, we need more staff. But when they are seeing these data, these metrics, it helps them to know that, oh, beyond words, this is what is actually happening. It presents a clear picture. Right. So we have key cybersecurity metrics. It's not limited to these four, right? But these are core metrics that you would most likely come across. The mean time to detect, mean time to respond, mean time between failures, and mean time to acknowledge. Right. So I think I already explained mean time to detect. How efficient are your systems and your team able to identify threats? So when you have a shorter MTTD, that means you're detecting things much faster. That means you can also respond to threats faster because when I find out that, oh, um, an unauthorized user just accessed a system and I'm able to detect it within 2 minutes it happened, it helps me block that access immediately before it escalates to something else. So organizations are always working towards as much as possible, even reduce your mean time to detect to zero so that as it's happening, you're detecting it immediately. Right. So this is a very important cybersecurity metrics. It helps you to improve your response strategies and it also helps you put a benchmark like across industry standards. Oh, okay, this is the benchmark. MTD should not be more than 30 minutes. No matter how bad things are, we should be able to detect incidents within 30 minutes maximum. So it helps you like put that benchmark in place. We also have the MTTR, mean time to respond. So remember the other one, you're detecting. So now after you've detected an incident, how quickly are you able to respond to that detected incident. Now, responding does not necessarily mean that you have fully resolved it. It does not mean that everything is back to normal, right? But at least you've been able to, you know, get into the process of resolving the issue, and then up until when it is finally resolved. So it helps you when your MTTR is smaller, like you respond much faster. It will help you minimize damage, because imagine an analyst created a ticket where maybe an unauthorized attempt to access a system was observed, right? And it was not responded to. You see that it now defeats that detection time. So this was raised almost, let's say, 2 minutes to when it happened. And then people on the other hand has not even picked and maybe start checking, oh, who is this user, which host was affected, this. So you now see that you also, as you're working on improving your detection time, you also need to work on improving your response time. We also have the mean time between failures. We have the mean time between failures. Um, so this is like, I don't know why the slide is showing up like this. So for mean time between failure, you're trying to analyze how you can, how quick between the time when something happens and when it is resolved, like the time between that failure. How are you able to resolve it? So this helps with reliability assessments, right? It provides like a benchmark for you to understand your cybersecurity infrastructure and be able to predict maintenance. So between the time that, oh, this is already giving issues, let's say it's one of your cybersecurity solutions, between the time where it's already giving you issues, um, to the time when it is resolved, the time between that failure, how are you able to gauge that? So it's important that you analyze these trends over time so that you're able to identify patterns. Oh, this solution, it wears off maybe within 2 months, and then you begin to make plans in advance to improve before the time that that thing would finally break down totally. We also have the mean time to acknowledge, right? So how quickly, this is the part where I talked about the fact that an incident may not have been fully resolved, right? But from the time that you even take prompt recognition of that particular event or threat in your organization and, immediately activate incident management. So we have tools for cybersecurity reports and presentation. This is largely dependent on who you're reporting to, the organization. Most organizations have their own special tools that they use. But then generally, we have the writing tools, your Microsoft Word, Google Docs, Grammarly. We have tools for data visualization, Draw.io. You could use this most times, to draft all those charts and all of that. You have your Microsoft Excel, Tableau, you have your presentation tools, PowerPoint, Google Slides, Canva, Power BI, and all of that. So depending on the organization, most organizations have dedicated reporting platforms, reporting tools that they use to document their findings and all that. So in conclusion, we've talked about what cybersecurity reports are and, core things you need to have in place. We also talked about cybersecurity metrics and making sure that your presentation is clear, concise, engaging. Try to practice writing reports. You could just take an imaginary scenario in your head. Oh, so let's assume there's a fraud incident, right? We're trying to find out, just create something in your head and try to actually practice doing a report. So you just have an imaginary, oh, this is what happened, this is how we found out, this is how the system was compromised, and then try to even practice drafting something on your own. And then for your presentations, where applicable, you could use structured storytelling, to just make it much, much better. Right. So if you have any questions, you can, I don't know if you're going to unmute to speak or maybe drop it in the chat and I'll attend to it.
Thank you very much, Goodness, for your insightful presentation. And I'm sure a lot of us have managed to learn a lot from you. So thank you very much for great insights. So if there's any question anybody want to ask, feel free. This is your chance, so that by the time we get to the session of report writing and presentation, after the CTF competition, you're able to come up with something solid, which is going to help you and a spot on the top three winners, and for the ladies on the top two winners. But before the mentees get in, I'm going to just ask a couple of questions to you, Goodness. This is for the purpose of, to get the ball rolling. So my first question will be, what are some of the qualities of a good report? Goodness, I hope you
Oh,
got my
sorry, I
question.
was muted.
Okay, great. So
Yeah,
yeah, that
so
was the first question.
the quality of a good report, like I mentioned, is fully dependent on the kind of report you're writing, right? But one of the core thing that is applicable to whatever report you're writing is um, it is written with your audience in mind. It is clear. They don't have to read it and then they still have a lot of questions. So your report should be able to already answer the questions in their head, should be able to answer the 5W questions that we've talked about, your who, what, where, when, and all of
Why?
that. So your visuals also need to be on point. If it's a presentation where you're using visuals, it needs to be clear. The report is supposed to, in its own, make communication clearer. So don't try to also make it bulky and all of that. So the quality of a good report, first off, is that you're writing with your audience in mind. You understand the purpose of that report, so you're able to, it basically influences both your writing style, your tone, and all of that. So quality of a good report, please know your audience and speak to your audience and make it clear. Communication should be clear, it should be structured. Don't take them from the beginning to the end and then you come back to the middle. Let it be structured. Take them through each process accordingly.
Thank you very much. And also, if you can mention some few tools for report writing / presentation, I'm sure they'll appreciate it. And then we can move to Wahoo's question from there.
Okay, so there are different tools. I had mentioned some of the most basic ones, and I did mention that most of these tools are unique to certain organizations, right? Most organizations have their reporting tools, but Corley, depending on the report you're writing, you have your Microsoft Word, you have your Google Docs. People do presentations using it could be your PowerPoint slides, it could be Google Slides. Some people also use Power BI, where reports are even kind of automated, right? You can actually just filter, look out for the date range you're looking out for. Data is already being fed into the platform and all of that, and depending on the kind of report it is. So there are different tools. Some are unique to organizations and some are um, just the general tools that we're very familiar with. We have your Excel that can help you, to make sense of data. And then let's say I'm even working with a Word document. Sometimes I may even need to go and do my charts or visualization. Maybe try to use Excel to make sense of the data. Oh, okay. 400 tickets were raised in a month, and maybe I'm trying to say inside these 400 tickets, maybe 100 of them were Windows events, 20 of them were firewall events. So I can actually use Excel to maybe sort and make sense of that data. And I'm now able to use the count to get what I need for my graph. So most times it's a mix of um, different tools. It may not just be one tool. Some people can even use as much as Google Forms. Maybe you're trying to do a presentation where you gather data from different sources. So let's say you use your Google Form, to get other people's opinion, this and this, and then you're now trying to compile things that you got from the data. So it all depends. Sometimes it can be a particular tool, or it can be a mix of different tools to be able to achieve your results. So we have the general ones. You have your Microsoft Word, Google Docs, Excel, PowerPoint. You have Draw.io. There are these tools for visualization. So we have Grafana, we have Infogram, even Canva. Canva has different templates, charts, just depending on what kind of data you're trying to present. You have Tableau and all of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're gonna go directly to Wahu's question, and she asked, just a moment, I track back. Okay, could you please tell us about documentation before starting a pen test? Uh, so document and score creep. I think you can also see her question on the chat, but that's what she asked rather.
Oh, I'll get on the chat now. I wasn't looking. Okay, I can see some questions. Was what's the tool that will be used for? Is that for me?
No, go to Wahoo. Just scroll down. You'll see her right. Before I typed about the Power BI.
Oh, could you tell us about documentation before starting pen test? Oh, like SOW. Okay, so that's not fully report writing kind of. Um, if I understand your question clearly, for instance, documents like your SOW, your NDA, and all of that, can you affirm?
Okay, thank you so much. Your name, little beautiful girl. Raise your hand. My name is Junguli.
Sorry, Caleb. Okay, sorry for that. Wahoo, can you please confirm about your question?
I was asking that because I recently learned about something about a SOW document and scope creep when you're starting your pen tests, like the scope on what you're going to handle. So I was asking, is that the same about the documentation or report? Because you need to do a report after, no?
Yes, most times, after you're done with a pen text, you have to do a report, which basically still goes through everything that we talked about. So first, you need to understand, I believe your SOW, that's your statement of work, right, is already going to outline the formal agreement between you and your employer, right? So it's ideally should state the goal of the engagement. And when you know the goal of the engagement, that already tells you the purpose of what you're doing and how exactly that means you know the goal of the engagement, so you know what they are expecting you to communicate. So your report that answers the part of report where you know your audience and you know the purpose of that report. So I believe your SOW would also most often speak to the scope oh, you are allowed to run this pen test on maybe assets within the test environment. These core ones in production, we don't want you to touch them. You understand? So your report is going to still be within that scope that you were given. So it's basically still going to follow all the report structure we talked about. But now, depending on what you have on your SOW, it's already like giving you your rules of engagement, what kind of deliverables they need. That is where they even state, oh, these are the kind of reports we want you to do. We want you to show us your technical findings. Or you maybe doing your pen test, you had to run some script or run some whatever. And what are your findings? What do you recommend? Um, things you were able to maybe find these loopholes in our environment. So how do you recommend we patch them up so that an actual attacker will not exploit it, right? So your SOW basically is like the agreement between you and the employer, and that already defines what exactly they are seeking for and what exactly you are going to text. So your report is not going to go out of that scope. It's going to still be within the purpose of why they asked you to carry out that pen testing engagement and give them value for what they paid for. So if I'm clear, are you asking for like a documentation of what your report would be like? Because that would be solely dependent on your findings in the organization. So maybe let me do a sample off my head. So let's say they wanted a pen testing, they want to find out vulnerabilities within their environment, and they've given you a scope, or maybe they have different network segmentation. Oh, we only want this within this network so that it does not affect people actively working or something, right? So that means, of course, your report needs to start with the title. Oh, this is pen testing for maybe this particular quarter. Um, your report would have to state that this does not, would I call it more like a disclaimer, that this is limited to your findings from testing assets within this particular network segment, right? So it's not that tomorrow maybe they find something else in the other segment that you did not test, and they'll not be like, oh, but we did pen testing and you did not find this. So your report needs to be clear and have that particular disclaimer. You're the, oh, this report covers this and this. This is the scope of the penetration testing, right? And then maybe you come down, you begin to build on your findings. Oh, these are the things you tested for. Oh, I try to see if maybe there are vulnerabilities in your web app. I try to like basically mentioning the major things you tested. Then among those things you tested, what are your findings? Oh, I found out that at this endpoint, maybe there's no proper validation and all of that. And then you begin to give your recommendations, what they can do better to avoid an actual attacker exploits it, right? You use visuals where possible. Take screenshot as you're doing your pen testing and all of that. Oh, this is the endpoint. This is all of that. So it's all legit. I just hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. Goodness. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your question, Wahoo. Anybody else who has a question? If not, we can start winding up and ending the session. Anybody else? Going once?
Hello.
Okay, Mr. Isaac, yes, what's up?
Yeah, and there's one thing I wanted. I don't know if you can help us on that.
Okay.
And there's some of us who may not have internet, or some of us who might like reading than listening videos.
Okay.
Like Isaac like reading than listening videos. For example,
Okay.
a good example. So I would suggest, if you can, all those topics that we have been covering, including the last one of today, if you can share with us as a presentation document instead of only video, please.
Okay.
And my second one is the one now you have shared with me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm unable to access it. It's giving me headache, especially when I try to put the password there for the resources.
Yeah.
The password given, for example, I want to access the non-technical resources and use that password you gave us last time. When I put there, it's bouncing back. I don't know what's happening.
I'll confirm that later with you. As soon as the session ends, I'll send you the proper password and then you can kick off from there. But also with the presentations, the problem is the presentations, for example, if Godness shares her presentation, it's not as detailed as you want it to be. It's just bullet points because presentations is meant to be as a guideline for the presenter. That's the sole purpose of the presentations. But anyway, I'll still try my level best to get the presentations from all the mentors and put it in a Google Drive and then share it with everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else who has a question so that we can end from there? Okay, just okay. So I think we've reached the end of our session. Thank you everybody for attending this final session of today. But apart from that, let me just give a little bit of pointers when it comes to presentations. So number one, your presentation is supposed to be as simple as possible, uh, which is going to be very understandable to the person or to the audience that you're presenting to. So that's one. Number two, it's not supposed to be wordy because, as I told Mr. Isaac here, that presentations are there to be as a guideline for you as a presenter. So it's just going to be containing some bullet points and very few explanations, but the rest of the explanations are supposed to come from you, the presenter. When it comes to the visuals, they're supposed to be very appealing. Not everything is just placed anywhere within the presentation slide. So you're supposed to have that. When you so once again, as the mentor had mentioned, depending with the type of presentation that you're doing, it should contain some sort of data, which is showing different type of visual presentation, like the one we had seen on her presentation here. You're supposed to show, let's say, matrices, etc. That's some of the things that you need to have within your presentation. Then we are looking at if you're dealing with a business, if you're presenting to the C-suites, so these are the CEOs and the board of directors, etc., you're supposed to depict what is the company saving from whatever exercises that you're doing, because for business people, what they understand is money and reputation, and what are they saving. That's the most important thing. So even within your presentation and conversations, it's supposed to be revolving around those three things. You need to show impact. What is the impact if this type of attack successfully happened? Your presentation need to be very consistent from the top till the end. For example, this will include font, the colors, and the design of the slides. It's supposed to be very consistent for it to be visually appealing. Your presentations are supposed to be very engaging in order to keep your audience active and want to learn more from you. You're supposed to know your presentation in and out. Even before getting to the presentation itself, you're supposed to know every slide at the back of your mind. For example, I personally, I do tend to practice way before getting into the presentation that I have the next day. I try to let me say, create the flow that I want the presentation to go, and even as Goodness said initially, predict some of the questions that you will be expecting and how am I going to answer them. you need to have a presentation style. For me personally, I tend to like to start from the scratch and then build from there going on top. So it doesn't matter if you're an expert, if you're a beginner. I'm just going to start from the scratch. Sorry. So that's my presentation style. So you need to find yours. Another thing is, don't assume that everybody knows everything that you're going to present about. You're going to have directors, you're going to have people in finance, HR. It depends with what your presentation is going to be about. Then those are the type of people you're going to be dealing with. So you need to know your audience, very important, and then structure your presentation accordingly. Um, and then present the most important presentation, important information rather. So number one, what's the problem, how did you combat it, what did you solve, and areas of improvements. Those are some of the things that you need to talk about, because if you start including a lot of information, as Goodness had mentioned, the presentation is going to get boring and you're going to lose a lot of people along the way. Another thing is, you need to avoid using hard words and also using slang within your presentation. Very important. I also mentioned about you need to know what you're talking about. But finally, your energy matters, and also you're confident. These are the most important things that you need to have within any presentation that you do, because people tend to sniff it out. For example, uh, if I'm sure majority of you have already been to university or are in university, when a lecturer doesn't know anything, you feel it like, hey, this lecturer doesn't know what he's talking about, right? Or this lecturer is not confident of what he's talking about. So you need to be very confident whenever you're doing your presentation, and you need to be a subject matter expert. You need to know what you're talking about. And your energy matters, as I mentioned initially. And finally, about understanding your audience, you need to know that in the audience, you're going to have two set of groups. So that's the technical and non-technical. When you go to the technical, you also need to know the subgroups that are there. So you might find head of ITs, you might find auditors, you might find GRCs. When you get to the non-technical, you might find the finance guys, the HR, the C-suits. So these are the CEOs, CFOs, etc. Now, according to the type of audience that you have, is the type of presentation you need to present accordingly. For example, if majority of the people in your audience are people from the finance, then definitely your presentation need to revolve around money, right? Because that's what they care about. Like, hey, there's this vulnerability, this is the amount of money we'll be saving, this is what we need to do. If you're talking to the IT guys, you need to talk about the vulnerabilities. Like, hey, we managed to find a CVE 2024, blah, 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 blah. This is how it's going to affect you. So you need to understand your audience. Is it technical or non-technical? Within the technical, is it the IT? Is it the auditors? Is it people in the GRC, etc.? You need to know the specifics and then align your presentations accordingly. So that will mark the end of uh, my additional points for today's session, which is report writing and presentation. Goodness, thank you very much for your time and effort. We really appreciate it. And for everybody who managed to attend this session, thank you very much for being here with us today. As I mentioned initially, you need to start preparing yourself. Next week, around the 17th to 19th, you're going to have your first CTF competitions. So prepare for that. And then the rest are going to follow on later. So that's it for today. Have a lovely weekend ahead, and we'll see each other on the WhatsApp group. Thank you very much and have a lovely weekend. Cheers to everybody.